Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching this episode 11 on sales structure in the US medical device market. Today is March 19, 2026. Your host here, Stéphane Toupin, president of Dawa Medical. Our guest today is Stu Brandon, change agent. We need to ask him what it is from ASCDX. Born and raised in Illinois, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Captain of basketball team at one point.
A long time
I think
ago.
long time ago, you worked for J&J for 21 years and then moved to more independent role. Stu, welcome.
Stéphane, thank you for having me. Excited to have a conversation.
So the reason we're having this discussion today is because obviously, as you know, Dawa Medical helped foreign manufacturing company to enter the U.S. market. Most of our customers are small to medium size, and when it comes to entering the U.S. market after a 510K, for example, they don't grasp the amount of work or red tapes, the U.S. market they will have to face with the U.S. market. So we bring them, to we're going through, FDA establishment registration, importation. We have two warehouses here in Miami. We do domestic shipping. We can do invoicing to hospital. But one point is most of the time they're looking for is distribution, obviously. There's different way to look at this. The U.S. market is huge and is very, very different from other market. If you look at the latest data, the U.S. market is about $200 billion for 2026. It's double that's the size of the Chinese market, just as an example. So it's a huge market. So to talk about distribution, obviously, we wanted someone who is in this world, and I've been following Stu for almost 6 years in LinkedIn now, looking at your post, and I like and I love the way that you bring that topic of being independent rep and breaking those myths, surrounding this. So first, please describe your organization.
Yeah, thanks, Stéphane. And it's been a process over probably the last 12 years. When I worked for DePuy J&J, I was a team leader. I worked for a distributor, and I had exclusivity to a part of Northwest Illinois that anything with DePuy that was used, sold in that area was credited to myself and my team. And then as this is not geared towards US people, but distribution has significantly changed within orthopedics and all med devices in the past 20 years. And, average selling prices go down, commission rates have been going down on top of that, which creates a double kind of whammy for people in sales. It's a double hit. Your commission rate could go down by 10%. I don't mean 10 percentage points, but if you're at 10% and go down to 9%, take that on top of a 20% decrease in sales price, and all of a sudden you're 30-40% making less than you were the year before. And so I got this idea, probably 12 years ago, took a couple of years to implement it. We left DePuy, my whole team did, which was only 3 of us. So we weren't huge at the time. We still aren't, but we went and we decided, you know what, let's pick up a company for total joints. Let's pick up a company for trauma products or any other company that we want. And we had the initial thought of having kind of one company for product line. Like total joints, we'd have one company. And what we realized through that is that we were limiting how we could serve our customers. And in return, we were limiting our opportunity as well, because the reality is no single company is the best option for every orthopedic surgeon that we were looking to work with. It's just the reality is that, Stryker has great products, Zimmer has great products, but their whole product portfolio is not the best fit for every surgeon. And especially when you get to smaller companies, they have just as good of products as the big companies. It's just the depth of their portfolio is not as deep. So we realized within the first couple years that we were going to need to even expand out and look at it a little differently from the standpoint of understanding that the total knee system that we had at the time was the only option that they had. And there were people that wanted to work with us that it wasn't really a good fit, the products that we had. And so that was kind of an evolution over, you know, several
Yeah.
years for us to understand like, hey, why are we trying to force surgeons to use what we have rather than finding good products that they would be excited about using? And so that's kind of in a nutshell how it has happened. We have also expanded from um, just serving customers in Northwest Illinois, Northern Illinois. Now we do things in 4 different states every year. Don't get me wrong, we're still a small organization, but we have the ability to truly anybody that wants to work with us and we want to work with them, we can find very good products for them to use.
Nice. And I think it's important to point out for our customers, especially that um, obviously they always have the option if they want to start their own US entity, have their own people as
Hmm.
W-2. But looking at how much it costs, it's so expensive to do that. If you want to cover all the US and have a VP of sales, it's going to be millions of dollars on investment. So it's not really an option for those small to medium-sized companies. So
Right.
you can go to OEM, you can find a national distributor who going to white label if they want, but that's not an option most of the time. So they're left with, uh, two two options were to find a stocking distributor, and we're going to talk about that, and 1099 or agent that are paid on commission. Um, and that's what we're discussing essentially today. Um, my question to you is, why are so many medical device rep and surgeons frustrated with large manufacturer today? Not just in ortho, but what specific changes in the industry are creating that frustration?
Yeah, I would say it's a couple things. On the rep side, I touched on it, is the average selling price over the past, 15 years has gradually come down. And obviously, as commissioned salespeople, that means that we have to do more to make what we did last year. And, you know, this is something that is not foreign to healthcare professionals, physicians in the US. I mean, you look at their Medicare reimbursement today compared to what it was 30 years ago, and you know, most of the people in the US who are not involved just can't comprehend how that's true. Um,
Yeah,
but the other part of it, so there's a natural market force aspect of it of prices coming down, and that's something that's out of my control, out of companies' controls. Um, but the thing that I really think is happening is that if you look at companies like Stryker, I like picking on Stryker, so we'll use them as the example. Is I think in 2023 they had worldwide sales of like 20, it was 20 plus $billion. And I don't know what it was 30 years ago, but it was significantly smaller than that. And what I think has happened is that as the market has grown so much, is that the market share leaders, Stryker, and I talk within orthopedics because that's what I have been
yeah,
my whole career. But the market share leaders just keep getting bigger and bigger. And so, what a surgeon, a very busy surgeon, a very big customer, they are a smaller and smaller percentage of revenue to the company. And at some point, these companies, especially the public companies, they're doing everything for their shareholders, for shareholder value,
yeah.
for profit. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but the unintended consequence of that is that they ultimately don't care about their customer the same way that they did when they were trying to become this giant. And
Right.
I think it's a tipping point that a lot of companies, hope that they have that problem to try and figure out someday, because that means that they got very big. But at the
Yeah.
same time, as a customer, they don't feel the same way, especially as, they don't feel listened to. What I've seen over the years is companies will say that they hear them, they say that they'll listen to them, but their actions are completely different. And I understand it. I mean, the reality is if you had a very, very busy, orthopedic surgeon that is doing, $3+ million of revenue, which this day and age is a very busy surgeon.
Yeah.
What is 3 million compared to 23 billion? Uh,
Exactly. And
Correct.
it's interesting because you're right, and that's one issue we need to discuss with our customer, that yes, the US market is big. Yes, the pricing tends to be higher than other country,
Mm.
but like you said, those prices went down, significantly since a couple of years. We see that. So
Right.
it's not the same as it was to be, 15, 20 years ago.
Correct. And that's just that is just market forces also, from the standpoint of, as you grow, you there becomes a point where you can't keep doing things the same way as what got you to that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have, when all of these companies were small and nimble. In fact, when I started with Depew in 1993, I remember shortly thereafter Depew celebrated going over 500 million in worldwide sales. Well, now Depew Synthes, last I saw, was like at $9 billion. So that's
Yeah.
18 times increase. Yes, J&J acquired Depew, J&J acquired Synthes, that adds to it. But it's still the point that it's not the same company that it was, just from that standpoint, and they
Yeah.
have to change.
Yeah. And I think, what we keep saying, and it's true, not just in orthopedic, but we saw that with like Stryker bought Inari, for example, not orthopedic, but more a
Hmm.
thrombectomy. There's, Penner but bought also, so all those big Medtronic, it seems that there's a lot of instability also for people working there, because you never know what's going to be the future, when they acquire a smaller one. Um, so that brings me to, for a manufacturer entering the US market, what are the main, pros and cons of building a W-2 sales force versus working with independent representatives?
Yeah. Well, you nailed it. I mean, building a W-2 sales force would be very expensive. I mean, obviously, there could be less expensive ways to do it if you just hire a couple people and say, hey, we're going to only focus in, a quarter of the US, like the Northeast or whatever you want to say. But the way I see most people do it is they kind of want to go all in across the country, which then becomes really expensive. And it could take years and years to even have enough revenue to cover your costs with that.
Yeah.
Going the 1099 distributor side has its own challenges for companies as well. Is that I'm an independent distributor. I'm a 1099, which, for those not listening, I'm not an employee. I pay all my own taxes, and because I'm a 1099, I'm independent. I can do multiple things, and we even do things that technically compete with each other. We have multiple total joint companies that we work with, multiple other companies, and that is, for some companies, that's just too much for them to handle, because they want salespeople only focused on their products.
Yeah.
But I would say the significant advantage of the 1099 route for a company that you're servicing trying to break into the US market is 100% the fact that, yeah, there's going to be some investment. They have to bring, product inventory resources over here, but they're not actually paying a sales force until things are actually sold
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
revenue collected. And that makes it easier for them to you know, to spread out. Plus, if you have distributors here, we may already know people who their product is appropriate for. And so
Yeah.
it could get that a little quicker.
Uh, Independent reps usually are often seen as having a better relationship with the physician or closer to and that's what we promote. The, um, uh, but why does that relationship tend to work better in some situation? You think?
Yeah, from my experience, and I didn't really fully understand that because technically, for most of my career with Depew, I was a 1099 and I was independent, even though Depew was the only company that I represented. And what I have come to realize is that as we have changed what we are, is we kind of we view ourselves now as working for our customers and finding them products that they want to use rather than, hey, I've got this widget and try and sell it to them. And
Yeah,
so we're very cognizant and work closely with our physician customers on what they're looking for. We've had physicians come back from national meetings like American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and say, "Hey, Stu, call this company. They've got a really cool product that I want to look at."
yeah,
Um, and just that ability changes the dynamic between the surgeon and people like myself.
yeah,
It is more of a partnership. It turns it into, we're on the same team looking to solve their issues. And
and
that is something that I didn't set out with that in mind, but it's kind of cool how it's kind of evolved into that and how the relationship has changed. Whereas when I was only with Depew, it you know, it was I was Depew.
yeah,
I was trying to sell them that, and if they had an issue with something with Depew, it was an issue with myself as well. We're now
yeah,
having the flexibility to pivot as needed really is flexible, and it's made my relationship with the surgeons we work with a lot
yeah.
better as well.
And I think what's interesting with that, and that's something that we try to promote, is that relationship is way different, obviously, because I think you are there to find solution, not just
Mhm.
for one specific, that thing that he's doing or doing the procedure, but for the whole procedure itself, everything that you can find a solution for them. So that's why I like working with
Right.
1099 because, they know their customer. And like you said, the customer will come to you and say, we need this, can you find
Right.
it? Do you have a
Right.
solution for that? Um, Eh, you know, from the physician's perspective, uh, what do they value most, in a rep today? Is it product knowledge, availability, logistics, support, or something else?
It is different. It truly is different for every surgeon. Is depending on who it is, where I am, you know, they may want me to be kind of like the encyclopedia of the product. Like
Yeah,
ask me specific questions about the implant. All the surgeons know how to use it. When they have questions, they're minor questions, just size difference from one to the other. Um, but there's other people that do want you to be more involved. So to answer that, it's very hard. And then also one thing that I'd like to say is that all surgeons will say, product knowledge and service, which is true, but I think a lot of surgeons are even saying that, but that's not really what they're meaning because there's a lot of great salespeople and or a lot of great reps out there, and it's very hard for us to beat each other on on service alone. It's always more than that because there are truly a lot of great service reps out there.
yeah, yeah. Um, there's obviously different independent models, including the pure 1099 representative, but
Mhm.
also the stocking distributor. Um, for you, do you act sometime as stocking distributor? Or how do you decide which structure makes sense for a specific product or company?
Yeah. So For myself personally, we don't do anything that's stock or currently do anything as a stocking distributor. I have friends who are distributors that have been stocking distributors over the years, and they like it. For myself personally, I just don't want to do it because as the market is changing so quickly, I would have, significant investment in as a stocking distributor. And there's also a legal aspect of it, which my friends who are stocking distributors, they say, no, you set up your corporation correctly. The liability isn't what you think it might be. But for myself, I have chosen not to do it because if there is more liability, I'm comfortable being a 1099 and just doing it off what's used rather than if I could make more by being a stocking distributor.
Yeah. So, and I think it's important to make a point here to for our customer to understand that when you act as a stocking distributor, obviously because most manufacturing company that's what they're looking for because it's
Mhm.
easier for them.
Right.
They buy the product and they sell it and ends off. Of which so not totally true, but um, so they prefer that way when we discuss with them, I said, well, if you look in orthopedic and spine, there's more 1099 than stocking distributor. In cardiology or radiology could be different. The mix could be different, but still 1099 are a huge part, of the sales pathway in the US. And what when I explain to them what 1099 do or don't do, they're like, I'm not sure I want to work with them because that's mean the manufacturing company will have to go through the value analysis committee to onboarding with the hospital and everything. That's a lot of work for a
Mhm.
small company. We have a solution for that. We say, well, we're going to do it for you. We're going to become the vendor and we're going to deal with the 1099. We're going to pay the commission and we're going to do the onboarding and the VAC committee. For people who don't know what the VAC committee is, though, bigger people think that because a physician came to their booth at a convention that and the physician wants the product, that's automatically a sales. It's not. It take
Correct.
the process is very long. It's very complicated. Sometimes some hospital make it very complicated. So the value analysis committee is that committee that will evaluate the product to see if it's a good fit for them in terms of quality and pricing and safety, whatever, depending on their criteria. So it's important for our customer to understand that it's not the stocking distributor in some field of expertise. They're not the majority of entity here.
Correct. The
1099. There's a lot.
Yeah, the stocking distributor, I only know a couple people that are stocking distributors. They're
Yeah.
very small minority in the US.
Um, in your mind, what are the biggest, mistake international manufacturer make when they're trying to build a U.S. sales force? I use Salesforce, but to
Right.
either their own or using
Right.
distributor.
So what I see specifically in orthopedics, which has to apply to pretty much everything in med device, is that kind of the assumption that the way it's done in France or the UK or wherever the company is from, it works over there. Surgeons love it, so therefore surgeons will love it in the US. Just the instruments, the delivery system of the implants, all of that, which, you know, couldn't be further from the truth, is that the US, we do have a lot of cowboys in the US. We have
We do.
a lot of very opinionated people who want things done a certain way. And, to a certain extent, that's the American way, correct? Is
Yeah.
do things the way I want them done. Whereas what my perception in talking with some of these companies that I've talked with is, yeah, I mean, we've got these instruments, surgeons love them, they work great, which I know that that's true, but that doesn't always fit with the way the American surgeons want them.
Yeah.
because there's, and I have to believe that this is throughout all specialties, that is
It
that
is.
American surgeons are different. And that's no different than if there was an American company that was going to go somewhere else. There's their customers are different there than in the US. And so there
Yeah.
would be challenges that way also. But I would say that that's a significant challenge other than what you touched on, just getting products approved in hospital systems. Because I
Yeah.
have had plenty of times where, potential customers wanted products from us, and ultimately their hospital system just didn't let them in,
Yeah.
let the products in, and they never could use them. And that's kind of the game that's also hospital systems are using in the US, is to make it as hard as possible for surgeons to get the products that they want to use.
Yeah.
Now, I
Yeah. That.
I firmly I firmly believe for the most part, if a doctor wants something bad enough, he can get it done. But in the US, there are so many battles that our physicians are having to fight with their hospitals, that there's only so many of them that they're going to choose to fight for.
Exactly. Totally. And it's true in radiology, cardiology, it's the
Yeah,
same situation, the same battle. It's not that easy.
right.
And
Now,
I think you.
one thing I will add to that, though, Stefan, is that as more and more cases are going to ambulatory surgery centers, and physicians, not always, but physicians are part owners, that can help um, speed up a process. Um, it's still not always quick and easy, but it is much easier to navigate overall in that scenario
Yeah.
than in large hospital systems.
Well, you're touching to my next question, and I want to bring up, when we discuss with customer, we 100% of the time we have to explain how the product will be used in different setting.
Mhm.
And it touched with the reimbursement. We're not going to cover that because we did in the past, but depending where the product will be used, the reimbursement will be different. But also we have to explain, what's in hospital inpatient, outpatient, ASC, OBL, and everything. People say, "What are those?" They don't understand those structure.
Right.
It's very kind of unique with the US. So you're touching about the ambulatory surgery center that are growing rapidly. How does that shift the change the way companies should think about sales channel and rep structures in the US?
Yeah. On the positive side, if the physician is part owner of it, it can speed up the approval process because they're one of the key decision makers. Um, However, as you know, this living here in the U.S., understanding ASCs, is there's kind of this crazy phenomenon where a total knee that is done in a hospital is reimbursed at a much higher rate than a privately owned ambulatory surgery center, which logic would say, hey, if you're reimbursing X for a total knee, it really shouldn't matter where it is. And obviously, the physicians agree that there should be site neutral payments, and that they should receive what they are from the hospital, because they're they're doing a total knee. It's not like it's a different procedure
Yeah.
outpatient than it is at the hospital. But that is a significant challenge because their reimbursement is less. So just financially,
Yeah.
you can't be doing things the same way, and you have to be more cognizant, of costs in surgery centers.
Does it happen often that a physician will use one type of implant or device in the hospital and another one, in their own individual surgery center?
Yeah, I from my personal experience, where we're doing both with the same doctor, um, their choice is pretty much the same.
Okay.
Um, but I do know of places where, maybe they're doing different implants because of cost. Um, and my take is on that is that there's a lot of great products out there. Um, if I was a patient, I wouldn't be worried about doing at the hospital, worried about the implant. My take, as I tell friends who are looking to get their joints done, just go to a doctor that you like and trust. You know, implants to a certain extent, they matter, but they don't matter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great products out there.
And, yeah, it's like, when a customer says, "Oh, we have a 510(k) now," but I say the 510(k) pathway is because there's other products similar on the market. So you're not
Correct.
unique,
Correct.
unless you have some uniqueness in your product that doesn't trigger anything than the
Right.
510(k). But it's rare that those products are so different that, it drive, the usage.
Yes. Right.
Um,
What the 510K does in my mind, it allows for incremental improvements over time as you're gradually tweaking, you know, little things that do make it better, a better device,
yeah.
or it should make it a better device. That happens over time with 510Ks.
How do you deal with competitive product or potential conflicts when and you or they represent, multiple manufacturer? How do you deal with that? How do manufacturing, are they all open to that, or some might say no, you need to be exclusive?
Um, for us, if they say no, you have to be exclusive. They're self-selecting out of us working with them. Um, I would be lying. I know not all of our companies think of it the same way. We genuinely have companies that are happy that we carry even competitive products because representing smaller companies, as I said earlier, the smaller companies don't have the product breadth that the big companies have. And again, this is not to say that they are lesser than quality implants. They just don't
Yeah,
have, you know, they may only have three hip hip stems for a total hip, where a big company may have 10
yeah,
different styles. Is
yeah,
what I'm saying. Um, so we have actually documented where we have more sales for companies because we have the ability to carry competitive products. Because if we just had to do it with one company, the surgeon wouldn't be working with us. And if he wasn't working with us, then he wouldn't be generating sales for that company. But it's only because, we can use a knee system from company A, we can use a hip system from company B, or a shoulder or revision hip or knee, just all of that because we can do it. The customers view us as the company.
yeah,
Even though we're not a stocking distributor, they're looking at it like our portfolio of products.
yeah,
And
yeah.
when you do it like that with several companies, and I've told people that, is that you add 4 or 5 smaller companies together, all of a sudden, that's starting to look like a medium-sized company.
Yeah, it
You
does.
you know,
Yeah,
like some of the, Enovis would be a company that is growing in the US, but yet they're nowhere near what the big players are in orthopedics. But what I'm saying is that our portfolio would put us, on sales par with them if we add up
yeah,
all of the sales that all of our smaller companies have.
yeah. And that's such a great point in a sense that that's something we're trying to um, tell our customer is the 1099, they have such a close relationship with their customer, and they don't cover all the US. They will have, one,
Mhm.
two, three state, depending on the structure. Um, but they want to serve that customer for everything they need. And that's why, the relationship is so close and it works, because any company who work with those people will benefit, that relationship. Um, and we see that, because we sell in spine for vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty, for example. And our distributors, they like the fact that, well, have one physician, he doesn't like that mixing system. No problem. We have another one from another
Mhm.
company. So he's keeping the customer for himself in a sense, but also the customer is satisfied because the rep has an alternative for them, for him.
Correct.
So,
Correct. And another thing to go along with that is that the companies that understand what we're doing understand that, and we'll just use, if you have a company that's trying to break into the US, they understand that they can't be a market leader overnight. It's going to take decades to get them to be a market leader. And so from that standpoint, if they have a path to start getting some business through a 1099 distribution model that they're only paying out when devices are actually acquired and purchased by a facility, that means that they don't have to grow as fast
Yeah,
and, to make the same amount of profit. And I think that that's a significant advantage. I know that there's different ways people look at it. People look at it as just like sales revenue, just got to grow that as much as possible. I personally like working with companies that are looking at it from pure profit standpoint, because I think those people are more sensible to work with rather than just revenue. A lot of times I see the people that want to grow really, really fast, they're doing it purely to have their company acquired. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but that we are not actively looking for companies that are looking to get acquired.
yeah,
Yes, we've had some companies that we work with get acquired, but the whole reason why is I think most 1099 distributors do in fact want a long-term relationship with their company partners. And we also have to play the percentages as well, that some of the companies that we represent are going to get acquired. And so the reason why we have multiple companies are so when that day happens, we're not put in a desperate situation either.
yeah. Because
Be-
that's the flip side, of being in 10
Correct.
and a 9 of stock as a distributor. You never know what's going to happen next year in 2 years. And to your point, especially with company who, when they have only one product, a
Hmm.
very innovative product, but only one product, that down the road, that's probably what's going to happen.
Yes. But even having that company with one product, the 1099 route is very good because we are already in a lot of surgical cases. And let's just say that that product could be used 10% of the time for a specific procedure. It is much easier for us to get that in front of potential customers than a W-2 sales force who is trying to bring that 10%, because over time, what I have seen is there's a lot of people out there. A surgeon could go to a trade show and see this unique product that could be used for 10% of their cases. But in all practicality, how much time, energy, and effort are they going to put into getting that approved for 10% of their cases?
Yeah,
Or, the reality is as we're talking, you know, most devices, there's nothing that seems to be like revolutionary out there that, oh, I have to have it to be able to do this procedure. Occasionally there will be new
yeah,
things, but if you're talking a specific screw, you know, it there's yeah, maybe this one's nicer, but if it's only applicable to 10%, it's
yeah,
easy for them to forget about wanting to use it unless
yeah,
it's also being carried by someone like me that can keep it front and center, be pursuing the approval process in their facilities so that
yeah.
they can do it 10% of the time.
Um, Looking at, the 5 years ahead, do you think that the industry will move more toward an independent sales model or back toward large vertically integrated companies?
Yeah. And I'm 100% biased in my opinion here. that that's my caveat. However, I do see that the independent route over the past 5 years, there's more and more people doing it. In fact, um, I have had so many conversations. I've literally had hundreds of conversations with reps who have worked for a single company that are looking to leave their their situation and they reach out to me because I do publicly talk about it on LinkedIn, our experience. And I love talking to them because I was stuck at one point like them. And so I do see the appetite on the sales side is more and more people want to do it.
Yeah.
And I I do think it is the best way for facilities and surgeons to acquire their products, as well as it's the best way for people like me to distribute products. So
Okay.
I see it continuing to grow. Now, at the same time, let's talk orthopedics specifically. Is orthopedics is a market that's still growing. So from that standpoint, the big players, the market share leaders, they are losing market share overall, and they have been over the past 10, 15 years. But because the market is growing so much, they continue to grow as a company, even though they're losing market share.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, you know, like me who are going out doing it. And we're small organizations compared to the big ones, but we're chipping away at it. And just the larger companies, what they are doing, again, they're so big that if you had several people leave a year in their organization of a couple thousand reps across the country, if they lose $10 million of business, $20 million of business a year because people like me left,
Yeah.
it's a drop in the bucket because they're continuing to grow. They're
Yeah.
losing market share, but they're continuing to grow revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there is, yeah, you're right about that. And I was thinking about, we touched about the value analysis committee and the onboarding. When you bring yourself, when you bring a new product um, to an hospital, most of the time the value analysis committee will ask, "Is going to replace something else?"
Mhm.
And talking about implants, is it difficult to fight with those big corporations who already have a contract in place, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's there's a lot of different thoughts about this. I mean, I personally believe that exclusive contracts or limited vendor contracts with hospitals that are accepting, you know, Medicare dollars is, you know, potentially violating Stark law and other anti-competitive things in the US. I firmly
Interesting.
believe that, but like another thing within the US is we've heard this for years about price transparency, is that hospitals are supposed to have price transparency today. But if they aren't, you know, what's the downside to it? I haven't heard
Yeah.
of any health systems yet being fined a significant amount of money because they don't have price transparency.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, there's a lot of things that there hasn't been enough motivation to change how things are done. Um, but you're correct. I mean, the concern for the value analysis committees is, as their reimbursement goes down, is this going to increase our cost? What's this replacing? And all of these are legitimate things for them to be asking.
Yeah.
And I am not an expert on that. I don't know if you have, but you need to have a conversation with Mark Copeland.
We had the
The
podcast with him,
uh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Mark is a great guy. And I love what he does. I've taken a lot of ideas that he has,
Yeah.
but he is he is the expert in this area. So I
Yeah.
would defer to him
Yeah.
on the strategies. But
Well,
but ultimately
yeah.
what it does require though is most of the time we do need a surgeon champion or a doctor physician champion to really help us fight that fight.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's key to have that champion. And like you said previously, they're not going to push for, I will say stupid thing like a guide wire or an
Right.
introducer, but, because that's not that important for them, but something that can change their practice, obviously, that's where, they could trigger that pushing it with the
Mhm.
hospital. This we running out of time. Conclude our podcast today, but I want to leave you chance if you want to add something else before we close.
Yeah, I mean, we covered a lot here. My perspective, again, I will admit I'm biased because of the way that we are doing things, but I have been on both sides. And the interesting thing about the US market is the US market seems to be more and more in constant change with medical devices.
Okay.
And that would be another reason personally that I see advantage of having a 1099 distribution model is as these changes happen, we're much more flexible to be able to, add product lines, work with companies, help them find um, key opinion leaders, because that's something that we didn't talk about, but every single company needs key opinion leaders out
Yeah.
there. People that are users of the product, people that can speak for it. There is a lot of legitimate need for, consultants and key opinion leaders
Yeah.
for companies.
And
Um,
sometimes you bring something so interesting because when we have discussion with our customer and they ask us, to find distributor, one of the question we ask is, do you have a key opinion leader even outside the US? It could
mhm,
be in France and Germany, because that can introduce us to some other key opinion leader because they all know each other.
correct.
So, and that relationship is precious, it's very fantastic because then you can introduce to a key guy in the US, and because that contact is already there with the manufacturing company outside the US, it could be interesting. So that's very interesting, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, so we are going to close this podcast. The information about Dawa Medical will be available on the podcast. We're going to put your informations too about your company. So if people want to reach out to you, they could. If they can go through us first, it will be interesting, but still,
Yeah.
we're very open.
Right.
So thank you again. Thank you so much for your time today. And I wish you all the best.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the opportunity to be on, Stefan. You and I have talked a few times over the past couple years, and you know, the more I've gotten to understand what it is that you do, you are positioned very well, and you do a good job of helping these small companies, you know, think through what they need to do to break into the US market, which
Yeah.
is a very important thing because, as you said, and I know this to be true talking with international companies, is that it seems like most people want to get into the US.
Well, for some of them, it's their first entry in any market. The US is their
Yes,
first one. So yes,
correct. And we spend a tremendous amount of money on healthcare, and I think even if that goes down, there's still tremendous opportunity for a lot of people. So, you know, uh,
perfect.
I encourage people to reach out to you as well that are looking to break in the market.
Thank you so much. So see you next time. Take
Yeah.
care.
All right. Thank you, Stefan.
Take care.